You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. For previous episodes, visit thinkingcountry.com or find the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud by searching for Meet the Farmers. Hello and welcome to episode 57 of Meet the Farmers. It's the last leg of my podcast road trip, and I've had an absolutely amazing time visiting farmers across the Cotswolds, Worcestershire, Herefordshire, and most recently North Wales. I'm pretty nervous for this one, and it's been a long time coming, but I'm really pleased on this last leg to be visiting Mr. Farming Podcast himself, host of Rock and Roll Farming and mixed farmer, Will Evans. If you use any sort of social media, which clearly you do because you're listening to this, have an interest in farming, you will have no doubt have heard of Will. He's done some fantastic work in the last few years, connecting farmers and telling their stories through Rock and Roll Farming. Please do listen and subscribe to that podcast. There's a large bank of episodes stretching back a long time, so work your way through those if you haven't already. Will, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's quite strange for the trip to be over. Can we start in the traditional way of this podcast, which is just talking about your farm and telling you a bit about family life here?
Sure, but first of all, it feels very strange to be answering questions rather than asking them for a change. But yeah, the farm is 500 acres. We're in northeast Wales. River Dee runs between our two main blocks of land, and is unfortunately out on some of it at the moment. We have some standing maize flooded, which isn't great. But we are a mixed farm. We have about 330 beef cattle, all brought in as calves from neighbouring dairy farms and taken through to fattening. And we grow about 300 acres of cereals. We grow maize as well. We try and grow all our own feed for the cattle, so we are very much self-contained mixed farm. Quite passionate about the soils. We're trying to improve the farm at the moment, trying to focus on what we can do better. Family farm, I'm in partnership with my mum and dad. We have a bit of part-time help, but it's mostly just us, which is great most of the time. It's been quite difficult this year, which is the weather and the workload. We could have done with some extra pairs of hands, but most of the time we manage ourselves. We do nearly all of it ourselves. We also do contract baling as well. I've done a lot of that this year. There's been a lot of grass around. Baled a lot of grass this time, which is good. But yeah, we're a traditional mixed farm. Family have been here since 1950. Grandfather came here then. It was pretty run down then. Granddad and grandmother didn't have two brass filings to rub together. I think my granddad was the youngest of about 6 brothers, and there was nothing left for him. I think he came here with like 1 cow and a few pigs or something like that. But yeah, they built it up over the years, and here we are, nearly 70 years later, still here and just about clinging on to a business.
Your general report of 2019 and how harvest was and how the year's been so far. This is rather a pointed question, and I probably know the answer.
Extremely difficult. 2019 has been really difficult. I think one of the most difficult of my farming career, actually. The weather's just been a nightmare. We had a lot of floods early on. We had crops washed out and we had to re-sow early on. And then the summer was very difficult. We just kept having enough rain to stop us all the time. Really dragged on. And then as we speak, we have standing maize underwater. We're having to bring cattle home now and inside now on the 1st of October, which is crazy. So yeah, it has been a difficult year. Yield-wise, it's been okay. Yields were all right. Prices aren't great at the moment for beef cattle, but that it's happened before. So yeah, 2019 not necessarily been a vintage year.
Anyone who follows you on social media will not be a stranger to the fact that you have 4 girls here, which is a big part. And having, dare I say it, listeners, having experienced it today, it's quite an active household.
Yeah.
They are bundles of energy, certainly.
Look at you being all polite.
Tell me about. You've actually asked me to talk about a couple of leading questions from this, which I'm not going to say now. But yeah, tell me about what it's like to have 4 girls on a working farm.
Bloody hard work. But at the same time, it is a huge amount of fun. So yeah, we had 4 girls in 5 years. So yeah, it is a lot of work. It is very intense, but yeah, it is great fun. And as you say, as you sort of politely alluded to, they are quite noisy, semi-feral farm kids. But we wouldn't really have it any other way. It's great, and you know, having the 4 girls together is pretty special. You know, they're close in age and they get on well most of the time. They certainly have their moments, but yeah, they do get on most of the time. Yeah. So
certainly, yeah, day and night. That means that there's a majority of women on the farm most of the time.
There is.
We're rather outnumbered.
I am outnumbered. Yeah.
And that leads on to one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which was to put it bluntly, sexism within the industry.
Yeah.
Discuss.
Yeah, and we have the 4 girls, and I think you wouldn't believe how often I get the comment, "You'll keep going for the boy, will you?" The amount of times I get that, I find it really bizarre in 2019. And not just from men, by the way. I get it quite often from women, which I always find really quite bizarre. Like the idea that even if we were insane enough to have a 5th child, and it happened to be a boy, I would say to all the girls, "None of this is for you. It's all for your little brother." I find that quite strange, but I think we get that. We do get it a lot, and I've even had the comments, the kind of things like mostly on social media, because it's a pretty dark place at times, as I'm sure we'll get onto. But I've even had those kind of comments of, not man enough to have a son and all that kind of thing, which is kind of, I don't know, very, very strange. But yeah, I'm very much a believer in our girls can do whatever they want to do, and nothing would make me prouder if they wanted to take on the farm after me. I very much hope they do, and I hope one day this is Evans and daughters. I think that would be fantastic.
Let's talk about rock and roll farming. How did the podcast start, and why did you start it in the first place?
Well, really, because I nicked the idea from Rob Sharkey in the States. I heard Rob's podcast. I can't remember how I came across it on Twitter somehow. Started listening to it, and I just thought, this is fantastic. This is great. And there should be one of these in the UK. Messaged Rob and told him I thought what he was doing was great. And for some reason he asked me to go on his podcast, which I did, and that was great fun. Really enjoyed the whole process, so I thought, well, I'll give one of these a go here. And I didn't give it a huge amount more thought than that, really. Didn't have any clue about how much work it would involve or how much time of my life it would take up. I'm sure you were the same with yours. And then I sort of just asked a few people if they thought this was a good idea, and they said yes. And I was quite conscious at the time as well. I was feeling quite annoyed or irritated, maybe, that I felt that the anti-farming kind of voices were all across new media, video channels, podcasts, things like that. And I was quite frustrated that farming hadn't kept up, and I felt that we were being left behind. And I was looking at a way that I could do more to help tell the farming story. And I started doing a bit of blogging and things, though I was very average at that. And, I started doing stuff on social media, and I was getting quite a good response. But what could I do that's just that bit more? So I thought, I'll give the podcast a go and see what happens. And that was it, really. I didn't really didn't give it a huge amount of thought. Other than that, I certainly didn't think it would go anywhere.
Some of your favourite episodes that you've done? I know that's a really hard. It's like trying to choose between your favourite child.
That's a really mean question, Ben. When I interview you, I'm going to ask you that.
we were talking about this earlier, but the difference was I didn't have a microphone in front of me.
Yeah. I think, I suppose...
maybe not favourite, just episodes that spring to mind.
Yeah, I think... I always like the ones that have made me laugh a lot. I really enjoyed speaking to Gillian Fennell, who's an Australian farmer on a big cattle station, South Australia. She was brilliant. For anyone who's listened to that will know why. She was very, very funny. I suppose the ones that stand out are the ones where we've talked about things where people have had difficulties, have been through great adversity, or they've had mental health issues and things like that. And I think some of the guests who've really opened up on the podcast and talked about that have really helped other people, and I've had some quite powerful messages on the back of those podcasts from people who've listened, and it's really helped them realise they're perhaps not on their own. Or I think, sometimes you think, well, this is a lot of work, I don't know why I'm doing this, and then things like that happen and you think, yeah, well, this little podcast I do is actually helping somebody. I mean, it's all on them, it's all on the guests who are brave enough to open up about problems they've had, but at the same time it's a pretty cool thing to think you've helped someone. So I mean, people like Doug Avery, obviously, which got a tremendous response. Stephen Parkinson, and then just recently Patrick Joyce, who I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and sadly lost his battle with cancer a couple of weeks ago. Patrick, to have spent his last few months trying to help other people and raising a lot of money for other people, I think getting the opportunity to speak to someone like that is a real privilege. And we were talking about it earlier when we did. It is a privilege to get to speak to people like that, and so those episodes I think really, really, really come to mind.
Have you learnt anything about farmers, about the farming industry, farming way of life, as a result of doing the podcast?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I think with farming, what it's done a bit, I think. So for me, I hadn't really. I wouldn't say I'm a sort of typical farm boy, but I am quite a home sort of person. So, I did go to university, I went to Harper Adams, and I've been off a few different places, but not really. I spent most of my life on the farm. That's where I'm happiest. The farmers around here, dairy farmers, livestock farmers, and I don't know an awful lot about other types of farming. So I suppose getting the opportunity to speak to farmers from different parts of the country, or people involved in different parts of the industry, has been a real eye-opener for me, and really made me appreciate all the different roles I think there maybe are in the industry as well, and the amount of different jobs people are doing, and the amount of people who are doing really groundbreaking and innovative things as well. And I think you'd say that 9 weeks out of 10, when I come out of the room after doing a podcast, I'm sort of bouncing out of the room full of enthusiasm. Well, this guy's doing this, or this lady's doing this, and isn't this cool? And like, we could do that here. And then so I was like, well, hang on a minute, no, we probably couldn't. Just calm down. But I know
that's like every single time.
And that's really nice. It gives you a real bounce, I think. And it's not. Yeah, some people might be doing something really innovative. Some people are just doing what they do really well. They're just really good, efficient farmers, and I think you can always learn something from everybody you speak to, and I think I genuinely have. So.
Tell me about some of the opportunities that have come out as a result. Because to name just one, Farmers Weekly, you became a columnist with them. It's quite amazing how in quite a short period of time you have you have risen, I suppose, to a sort of central platform within ag, and you've had lots of exposure. Tell me about that process, and perhaps has it had an impact on you personally?
Yeah, one thing people might not realise is the podcast. I think I did maybe refer to it a bit when I spoke to Sally Owen. Is that I'm not a massive personality. I'm not a natural maybe for doing something like this. And when I started, I'm telling my mum, and my mum was just, she was like, "What, you're doing what? You?" But I was just, I didn't want to be in front of a camera. I didn't want to be the focus of attention, really. So I thought, well, doing a podcast and asking other people questions and putting their stories front and centre was a great thing for me to do. I could do that. So I have found some of the attention quite difficult. But at the same time, what it has done is put me out of my comfort zone and made me do things that I never thought I would do. I spoke at a few conferences and things like that to huge roomfuls of people, which very much put me out of my comfort zone. That's not really me at all, but when I've done it, I've enjoyed it, and I think it's been a really good thing for me to do. And again, I've met people from that. I think they've been quite well received. I managed to make people laugh a bit anyway. Yeah, and the Farmers Weekly column, I mean, that's a huge honour. I mean, I just love doing that. I mean, I've read Farmers Weekly like we all have since I was a kid. And, you know, I left school when I was 15. I hated school, not academic, spent most of my time looking out of a window. It's not a natural fit for me to be writing, you know. I'm quite proud of it, to be honest, because I'm not academic. I quite like doing it, and all the things I do, I'm probably quite the most proud of that, I suppose.
This question is mainly just for me, but what do you think makes a good podcast episode? I need some tips.
You don't need any tips from me, but I mean, it's you'll find this exactly the same as me, but with farming, there's so many interesting stories to tell.
Yeah.
Because whether they're a first generation farmer who have no farming background, but they've just for whatever reason fallen in love with it and they've been so desperate to get into it, and they've moved heaven and earth and taken the opportunities they've been given to get into the industry, or whether they're a 10th generation farmer. I know you've been speaking to Gareth Wynne-Jones today. His family, I think, have been there for sort of 350 years on the same farm, which is
350 years of living the dream.
Living the dream, exactly. You know, everyone's got a story to tell. So, you know, I mean, my own family, we've farmed in this area for generations, and you know, most of my friends I grew up sort of through young farmers and rural area. Then I went to Harper Homes, and most of my friends are involved in agriculture in some way or another, even if they're not farming themselves. So, you know, I'm aware of the stories that are in farming. I'm always interested in people anyway, how they've got to where they've got to. So, yeah, I think human interest stories are always good, but then farming's just got that in spades. You know, it is a life less ordinary. I mean, there's very few of the population are farmers, so it is an interesting career choice anyway. And you know, we have quite a lot of non-farming friends, you know, and then you bump into perhaps their friends. Sometimes you don't know any farmers, and you get talking to them, and you say, "Well, I'm a farmer," and they're always instantly fascinated. So I think interest in food production has never been as high as it is now. So I think just by being able to speak to those people, then letting them tell their stories, I think it makes a good podcast.
Yeah.
And you obviously do as well.
Yeah. I mean, do you have sort of stats on your listeners? Because one of the things that I am still working towards and struggling with trying to work out how to do this, but it's accessing so-called inverted commas new audiences.
Yeah.
Audiences that don't necessarily listen, who aren't farmers, and don't have an interest in food production and
definitely
and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, how do we do that?
So when I started the podcast, I was very keen to make it appeal to, or to make it try to appeal to farmers and non-farmers, which is really hard. And I have much more sympathy for things like Countryfile now, because they're trying to do that, and farmers tend to give it a bit of stick because it's not technical enough, and but it's difficult to make it entertaining without going too technical, as you know. I suppose, I mean, when I was on Countryfile talking about the podcast, I got a lot of interest afterwards from non-farmers, which was great. I got a message from a truck driver who listened to 6 in a row on his evening shift. I think Sarah couldn't think of anything worse than listening to me for 6 hours. But yeah, it was surprising how many non-farmers I get. But it is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because we're very good at speaking to each other in our echo chamber. I've never wanted to do that. I've always wanted to try and take it outside of farming and say to non-farmers, look at this. This farming isn't a storybooks 1950s industry. It's a modern high-tech industry where people are doing really innovative, groundbreaking things. Isn't this cool? And I'm quite passionate about that. So it is difficult, but I think the more that you and I and all the others out there who are doing this, podcasts, videos, and just telling our story, I think the better it is. And that's all we can do, by the way. It's no good butting heads with the sort of we can't stop people putting out anti-farming things, but what we can do is we can put stuff out there so that if a 14-year-old kid Googles a question about farming, that our stuff comes up in your Google search results as well. And I think that's very important. I think we were slow as an industry in doing that, but I think we are catching up.
So time of recording right now, just moving into October, it's going to be a tough month ahead, and it's certainly something I've taken away from. This is the final stop on this little road trip. Something I've taken away from the last week is definitely how much of a brave face people are putting on in true farming grit style. But there is still, with a month to go until theoretical Brexit day, a huge amount of uncertainty. There's that word again.
Yeah.
What's your sort of take on the situation at the moment and challenges for the short-term future?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't very worried about Brexit. I am. I think we are quite exposed as a business. At the same time, I'm trying to not to worry about it too much because there's nothing we can do. I'm trying to concentrate on our farm, make it as efficient as possible, cut out costs where I can. I'm trying to focus on the details. I'm trying to focus on doing everything we can better. I think we are succeeding at that actually over the last few years. I think we're doing okay with things. Long term, it does worry me. I think a few people have got their heads buried in the sand. The changes that are coming, I think a lot of changes are coming quite quickly. I think in this area of the country, a lot of smaller mixed and livestock farms that are quite reliant on their single farm payment. It makes me nervous that the government are drawing up this new UK ag bill, and I'm not at all confident that they will get that right, if I'm honest. I don't have a lot of faith in them. Having said that, I am quite encouraged by the fact that they do want to speak to farmers. Some of the consultancy papers and things they've had, certainly in Wales, they've spoken to a lot of farmers, a lot of stakeholders, and seem to value the responses. So that encourages me, but whether they'll get it right or not, I don't know. I'm not convinced by the Green Brexit agri-environment scheme focus. Although I'm not against it in principle, I think it could be very good. for the country, because we can't compete on a commodity basis with countries like the States and South America, obviously. We do need to set ourselves aside, I think, which we will probably be able to do, but I'm yet to be convinced that agri-environmental schemes will make farmers profitable.
Tell me about eatfarmnow.com and how that came about.
Yeah, so again, I was sort of thinking with the podcast and what more I could do. And then I had this idea that there's so many great farming podcasts out there now, like yours, and there's so many people doing, or so many people telling the farming story, whether it be videos or blogs or podcasts. And I was thinking, well, they're all quite spread out over the whole internet, various platforms. Wouldn't it be great if they were all replicated on one site? And I sort of kicked the idea around for a bit, and then I got in touch with Simon Haley, who's the guy behind Farms of the UK. I've met Simon before, and Simon is very enthusiastic, great guy, makes things happen. So I rang him up and said, I've got this idea, what do you think? And he said, that's a really good idea, let's see what we can do. And it kind of went from there. So we got various other people involved. Jez Fredenberg, we asked her to be our editor, and Duncan and Emma at the ad plane, got them involved to build our site. And now there's sort of a group of us behind it. And we're really proud of it. We think it's got real scope to help spread the farming message, really. And as we know with our podcast, it's hard to build an audience, isn't it? You know, and you put an awful lot of effort into it. It's really hard. That's the hardest thing. And we thought, well, if we've got this site where someone might come to, maybe they've heard your podcast, they come to the site, they discover my podcast, or maybe someone's heard my podcast, they come to the site, they discover someone who's doing really good videos. And we thought, well, really, there's no losers with this. Hopefully, everybody will benefit. Yeah. And it's been great. I mean, it was a lot of work getting off the ground. We've only just got going with it, really. The hard work starts now. Absolutely. We're getting a lot of interest from all around the world, which is brilliant. And we hope to have agricultural podcasts, videos, blogs from every country on earth if we can. Though we've launched with English-speaking countries just for practicality reasons. But we're excited about it. It's a lot of work, but we think we've got some really good stuff on there. We're finding some really good things out there, really good content. Yeah,
there's so much on there I had no idea about.
Yeah, it's really good. And I mean, a lot of it I've just sort of found by accident. Yeah. And it's just been great. And we get a really good response from it. I think people see the benefit from it. You know, they like having their stuff on there because I mean, we try and make it as easy as possible, and we're getting really good site traffic. People are interested in it. It's quite interesting seeing what people are searching for on the site. So the most searched for word is food, which I think is quite interesting. And one of the things behind it was that I wanted to, for a long time, I've been quite conscious that, or I think, if you walk down the high street and you said to people, what's the first thing you think of when I say food? I think most of them would say supermarket or celebrity chef. I don't think many of them would say farmer. So one of the things with it was we wanted to, once again, bring farming back with food, which may sound silly, may sound obvious, I don't know. I'm not sure that it is anymore, so that was part of it, and that's why we've got farming content and food content from the other side of from the other end of the food chain, I should say.
I want to move on to TB, which was something I covered quite a bit with Rob Havard a few days ago, but we've got a different area, a different situation. What is the current framework in terms of the story behind TB in this part of the world?
So we haven't had it here yet, and I say yet because we will, because it's all around us. Nearly all of our neighbours have had TB on and off over a number of years. It's having a terrible effect. I mean, I think in North East Wales, TB incidences went up 76% last year, which tells its own story. And whatever the reason, I think we talk about Brexit and you talk about all these different things on the industry, but I think on the ground in areas like this, and certainly sort of South Shropshire, Gloucestershire, Derbyshire, it's having a devastating effect on farmers. And I mean, I've got friends, and we've sort of formed a de facto TB support group where we try and keep an eye on each other, because we've literally got a WhatsApp group about it, because people are dealing with the stress of trying to get rid of TB in their herd, trying to work out what to do next, all the bureaucracy around it, and it's really, really hard, to see your friends who rough, tough farmers, and you sit around the kitchen table with them and they burst into tears because they're losing their cows, they're losing heifers, and it's never ending, and it just seems to get worse and worse. I don't think policymakers, I don't think politicians have. I appreciate they're in a difficult place with it. It obviously requires extremely difficult decisions that can't be taken lightly, but I would say I mean, we talk a lot about mental health in farming, and I would say that TB is having as bad an effect on farmers' mental health as anything else in this country. And I think that's pretty serious, and I don't think it's talked about enough. We all know the statistics, and when you are living with that pressure every day, and you know what it's like in farming, a lot of people are on their own a lot. We don't have a lot of staff on small family farms. You're on your own with your thoughts, and you've got to deal with it all yourself, all the phone calls, all the emails, all the bureaucracy, as well as the emotional impact of it all. It's really bad, and it's. I don't know what the answer is, but the politicians need to realise that this is not. It's getting worse. It's getting much worse, and it certainly has over the last few years, and we've been living with it for long enough now.
Dealing with stress and mental health is something that, as you said earlier, is something that we both covered with various guests along the way. One thing that does help a lot of people is exercise, and not just going about your day job, going around the farm. It's actually getting away, doing something else, doing either a team sport or, in our case, running. Tell me about London Marathon.
It was bloody hard. No, it was great. It was a brilliant experience, as you can imagine, though it was very difficult training for it over the winter. Started training for it sort of last September, October. It's not a lot of fun going out to run in dark country lanes in a Welsh winter. And, it takes its toll on family life as well. You have to train at weekends and things. But, it was brilliant, and Farm Africa were an amazing charity to run for. It was a nice feeling to be helping fellow farmers as well. It was a really cool thing. When you look at what they're doing, they really are changing lives. And then from my own point of view, going back to your question, mental health, running, I can't explain how much it helps me with stress, really, running. And sometimes you tell people, listen, they kind of, there's that thing in farming for a start, that sort of macho thing, well, you must not be working hard enough if you're going for a run at night. All that energy, you must not have worked hard enough in the day. But, it works for me. I go out for a run at night, and I manage to. It's like a trigger, really. I run off the stress of the day, and I don't take my phone. I don't listen to music. I just concentrate on breathing and putting one foot in front of the other, and I can manage to pretty much zone out. So it's been really important for me.
I don't know how many people this is going to be news for, but Will is stepping back slightly from rock and roll farming. Without wanting to go too much into it, what are your reasons behind that, and why now?
Yeah, just I keep saying it, but it has been a difficult year. I found it really hard to keep on top of everything this year. With the farm, obviously, family, 4 children, beautiful wife sitting next to me who I like to spend time with as well. And it's been difficult to juggle everything. As you know, Ben, podcasts do take up an awful lot of time, with researching, editing, recording, uploading. It does take up a huge amount of time, and I've always tried to do that.
Far more time than you could possibly imagine.
Oh, really? Very much so. Yeah, and I've always done it at night or early mornings, or on. I've not done any less work on the farm, and I think I've done it for sort of 2.5 years of pretty much every week.
Yeah,
and just this summer has just broken me a bit, really, with it, to be honest. It's just been something's had to give, and I didn't do it lightly, because I know a lot of people listen, and I felt quite a responsibility to listeners, and I didn't want to let anyone down, which has been a big.
You're definitely not doing that.
No, but it's been a.
So, I can know, yeah.
It's been a big thing for me. I got to a point where I was letting everyone down. I think this summer I felt like I wasn't doing the podcast well enough. I felt like I wasn't spending enough time with the kids. I mean, I barely saw the kids this summer, and that I found that very difficult. Although I'm not sure what I could have done about it. I just did find it difficult. Sarah and I found it hard to spend much time with each other. I was meant to be going on holiday with you and the girls, wasn't I? And then I couldn't go because of the weather. And then that hit me quite hard. I just said to Sarah one day, well, I think I just don't think I can do this at the moment. I think I need to take a step back. I can't or don't want to take a step back from the family or the farm.
And in many ways, it's an impossible situation, isn't it? Because you get to that stage, and I've been there, and a lot of other people listening to this will have been there, that you almost feel trapped within a situation. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Yeah. You get to a stage where something has to give, and it's never easy to decide what that is. But also it doesn't mean that things can't start again in the future at some other point when
No. I mean, I might well bring it back at some point, but at the moment I do need to just concentrate on the farm, and we've got a lot going on. Kids are busy, as you all have seen tonight. The kids are in and out running. We have to run around to various clubs and sports things and that. And as well, a big part of it is that I'm quite conscious that they're growing up very fast, and I don't want to miss it. And there's been a few times, being honest, with the podcast where there has been a Sunday afternoon or something where I've had to do stuff for the podcast, and the kids have been running around playing outside. And I thought, what am I doing? And I should be outside playing with the kids. So, you have to make these decisions. It's been difficult.
Right. So we're going to try the 1 minute soapbox, which on this podcast was kind of the traditional way of ending episodes. Well, can you think of a subject that you'd like to talk about?
So I'm not a big soapbox ranter type, really. Does a soapbox rant have to be negative? Does it have to be?
No, definitely not.
It can be something positive.
Most aren't actually. I think sometimes people do. Yeah, it's just about any subject. It could be a cause that you want to promote. It could be a local cause. It could be a charity. It could be an interest. Like I say, we've had everything from Lincoln City Football Club, through to rewilding on the rant side, or anything in between.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I might sort of talk about social media in general. I think.
Okay. Yeah, because that is actually one thing we had added on the list, which we didn't go on to, which was sort of communications, and especially for millennials and younger people. So.
Yeah. I will. That is what I'll mention, actually.
Super. Great. Will Evans, you have 1 minute to speak about social media, starting now.
So, yeah, I will struggle because, as you will have gathered from my other answers, I do ramble a bit. But I get very frustrated with farming social media that we tend to lecture people. So we shout in our echo chamber, and we're very, very good at talking to each other and patting each other on the back and telling us how marvellous we are, different things. But we are absolutely crap at getting. We are, we are crap at talking to non-farmers and our customers and our consumers. We are very patronising sometimes, and we like to use that phrase, we should educate the consumer, or even worse, thank a farmer for your next meal, which is the most cringeworthy thing ever. Not only will we charge you for our product, we also want your thanks. It's terrible. So, I mean, I do get very frustrated. There are some brilliant people on there. Oh my God, that's a minute gone.
That's really no time at all.
Oh God,
that's very good.
This is why I have to ask questions, not answer them, because I ramble. Anyway,
not at all. Well, thank you so much for that. It's honestly been a real privilege, is the word I'm going to use. Yeah, and I want as a simple listener of Rock Roll Farming and a fan as well, I want to say a huge thank you for everything you've done, because it's farming's in a better place because of it. Definitely farming communications. I think social media is a better place because of it as well.
Stop it, man! You're embarrassing me.
Yeah, we all hope that you'll come back very soon. But but thank you for everything you've been doing. Thank you for letting me do this as well.
No, thank you very much for speaking to me, for Meet the Farmers. It's been a real privilege. I'm a fan as well. I love your podcast. It's been fantastic listening over the last. How long have you been doing it? A couple of years.
3 years.
3 years. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 years. In November, will be.
That's a slog, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like a life sentence. Meet the Farmers listeners, you'll be sorry to hear, will be continuing at the moment, but there won't be many more visits this year. But there's a heck of a lot of editing to do. Huge thanks to Will, and we'll see you next time. When we'll be back to East Anglia. So I'll see you then.